My husband's daughter claimed I stole her inheritance after I found out she's been hiding my husband's secret health condition, and now the whole family is turning against me for uncovering the truth. When I married Tom, 55M, 2 years ago, I knew that blending our families wouldn't be easy. I'm Amanda, 48F, and I have a son from my first marriage, while Tom has a daughter, Lily, 30F, from his previous relationship. Lily and I have always had a rocky relationship, but I've tried my best to get along with her. Tom's health had always been a concern, as he'd had a heart attack a few years before we met. Still, he assured me he was managing it, and I took his word for it. Recently, though, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Tom was more fatigued than usual, often canceling plans at the last minute and frequently visiting doctors. When I asked him, he brushed it off, saying it was just routine checkups. But it wasn't just his health. There were odd behaviors around Lily as well. She'd visit unexpectedly, and their conversations always ended abruptly when I walked into the room. I could tell there was something they weren't telling me, but I didn't push it, until the day I found out the truth. It all started one morning when I was cleaning the house. I noticed Tom's office door was slightly open, and a pile of papers was scattered across his desk. Normally, I wouldn't go through his things, but a folder labeled health insurance caught my eye. Curious, I opened it, and my heart dropped when I read the contents. Medical bills, lots of them, all recent, and all showing that Tom had been undergoing treatments for a condition I had no idea about, something serious that he'd chosen to keep from me. As I went through the paperwork, I discovered that Tom had been diagnosed with a progressive illness. According to the documents, he'd been seeking treatment for almost a year right under my nose. I felt betrayed and hurt, wondering why he hadn't told me. I thought we were partners, yet he'd been hiding something so significant. When I confronted him later that evening, Tom confessed, but it was Lily who had convinced him to keep it a secret. She'd insisted that it would burden me and argued that I didn't need to be involved. I couldn't believe it. When I turned to Lily, demanding an explanation, she barely flinched. Instead, she accused me of being selfish, of always prying into matters that didn't concern me. You wouldn't understand, she spat, her eyes cold. Dad didn't want you to worry. You would have just overreacted. Overreacted? I was furious, but I also felt a pang of sorrow for Tom, who looked ashamed and defeated. Tried to argue to make him see that this wasn't right, but Lily cut me off, saying I had no business meddling in their affairs. Besides, she added with a smug smile, "You're not family." Not really. Those words stung, and as I stared at the two of them, I realized just how deep Lily's resentment ran. I'd always suspected she resented me, but I never thought she'd go this far, keeping her father's condition from me, convincing him to hide something that affected us all. But it didn't end there. The very next day, I started noticing small changes around the house. Personal items that belonged to me had been moved or gone missing entirely. I found some of my belongings in the guest room, and Lily was acting like it was all perfectly normal, as if I were somehow an intruder in my own home. It was unsettling, but I knew better than to confront her directly without evidence. Then, things escalated. A few days later, I received a call from Tom's attorney. He wanted to clarify some details about Tom's will, which struck me as odd since we had already gone through this process a few months back. When I met with the attorney, I was shocked to learn that Tom had recently made changes to his will, changes that significantly favored Lily, with no mention of the adjustments he had discussed with me before. When I asked about it, the attorney looked confused and mentioned that Lily had been overseeing the modifications on Tom's behalf. I felt my blood boil. Not only had she hidden Tom's condition from me, but now she was actively undermining me financially. I stormed back home, my mind racing with questions. I confronted Tom about the will, and though he seemed surprised, I could tell he knew something. He admitted that Lily had been helping him manage things, but he hadn't realized the extent of her influence. He seemed genuinely upset, but once again, Lily's manipulation had woven its web around him, and he was too weak to fight it. When I tried to make him see reason, he shut down, claiming that Lily was just looking out for his best interests. Frustrated, I turned to my own resources, contacting another lawyer to review our options. That's when I learned about the inheritance, funds that were supposed to be held for Tom's future medical expenses and jointly managed by us. Lily had been positioning herself to claim control over it, even though the terms clearly stated it was meant for both of us to oversee together. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I demanded that Tom and I sit down with Lily to straighten everything out, hoping that seeing the facts laid out would wake him up to the truth. When I confronted her with everything I'd found, she just laughed. She accused me of plotting against her and claimed that I was trying to take away what was rightfully hers. In front of Tom, she insisted that I was stealing her inheritance, twisting the story until I looked like the villain. I tried to explain myself, but Lily was relentless, turning every word I said against me. Tom watched us in silence, torn between his wife and his daughter, his face a mixture of confusion and pain. He didn't know who to believe, and I realized, with a sinking feeling, that I was losing this battle. Lily's accusations only grew louder, and before I knew it, the rest of Tom's family had been dragged into the fray. They began to side with her, convinced that I had manipulated Tom and sought to rob his daughter of her rightful place. I was labeled a gold digger, an outsider who had only married Tom for his money. They ignored everything I'd done for him, everything we'd built together. They only saw the lies Lily had spun, and I was powerless to stop them. My world was crumbling around me, and as I sat alone in my house, surrounded by the remnants of a life I thought I understood, I realized that this wasn't just a battle over inheritance or health. This was a battle for my place in Tom's life, a place that Lily had been trying to rip away from me from the beginning. And unless I fought back with everything I had, I was going to lose it all. The weeks following my confrontation with Lily were a blur of whispered accusations and suspicious glances. Tom's family, once cordial, had turned hostile, and I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. Lily's manipulation had taken root, and the rest of the family believed every lie she spread about me. At family gatherings, they would openly question my intentions, making passive-aggressive remarks that left no room for doubt. They saw me as an intruder, someone who was only there to take what wasn't mine. I tried to talk to Tom, hoping he'd finally see through Lily's schemes, but he was distant, almost evasive. Whenever I brought up his health or the changes to his will, he'd grow defensive, shutting down any discussion. It was as though he didn't trust me anymore, and that realization hurt more than I could have anticipated. Lily's influence had poisoned him against me, and I was beginning to feel the full weight of her betrayal. One evening, while Tom was asleep, I decided to search for more clues. I knew Lily had to be hiding something, and I was determined to find it. As I scoured Tom's office, I came across a series of emails between Lily and someone she had labeled Mom. The emails were shocking. Lily had been in contact with Tom's ex-wife, Jennifer, planning ways to oust me from the family. They spoke in code, but it wasn't hard to piece together the basics. They had concocted an elaborate scheme, one that involved fabricating evidence against me to convince Tom and his family that I was unstable, greedy, and unfit to be in his life. It became clear that Lily's endgame wasn't just about securing her father's inheritance. She wanted me gone, permanently, and Jennifer was helping her do it. My hands shook as I read through the emails. They discussed making it look like I was stealing from the family business, a business I had never even touched, and then using that as leverage to force me out. They'd planned to call in favors from people they knew, people who could make a case that I was mentally unstable. Lily and Jennifer even referenced a friend who worked in a psychiatric facility, someone they could potentially use to have me committed if I resisted their plans. It was terrifying. They had thought of everything, leaving no room for me to fight back. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt a spark of anger, a determination that I hadn't felt in weeks. They weren't just trying to take away my home and my husband. They were trying to erase me completely. I wouldn't let them. I took screenshots of the emails and saved them to a secure file on my phone. This was my only leverage, and I knew I had to be smart about how I used it. I needed an ally, someone who could help me counteract Lily and Jennifer's influence. I decided to reach out to my lawyer, David, and tell him everything. He was the one person I trusted, and I knew that he'd be able to guide me on the next steps. When I met with David the next day, he listened intently as I laid out everything I'd discovered. He was shocked, but he didn't hesitate. He told me we could use the emails to build a case, to expose Lily and Jennifer's conspiracy, and protect my rights. However, he warned me that we had to be careful. If they realized I had the evidence, they might accelerate their plans. I had to act quickly but subtly, staying one step ahead of them at all times. David advised me to gather more information, specifically anything that could prove Lily and Jennifer were actively trying to sabotage me. He suggested setting up security cameras around the house, particularly in the areas where I kept my personal belongings and documents. I followed his advice, installing cameras in my office and bedroom, places where Lily had no reason to be. If she tried to tamper with anything, I'd have proof. Over the next few days, I waited, biding my time, all the while pretending that I hadn't uncovered their plan. I played the role of the naive, oblivious wife, hoping that Lily and Jennifer would grow complacent, confident that their scheme was working. It wasn't long before I caught them in the act. One afternoon, I returned home to find Lily in my office, rifling through my files. She froze when she saw me, a look of guilt flashing across her face before she composed herself. She quickly covered by claiming that she was looking for something Dad needed. I knew it was a lie, but I didn't let on. Instead, I smiled, acting as though I believed her excuse. I needed her to think I was still in the dark. That evening, I reviewed the camera footage, and my suspicions were confirmed. Lily had been going through my financial records, likely trying to find anything she could use to frame me as a thief. The footage was clear, undeniable proof that she had no regard for my privacy or my rights. She was a snake, willing to do anything to see me fall. But the footage wasn't enough. David had been right. I needed more. I continued to monitor her movements, carefully documenting every suspicious action, every conversation she had with Jennifer over the phone. Their arrogance worked to my advantage, as they didn't bother to hide their intentions. They spoke openly about their plans, confident that I was too blind to see what was happening. Then, one day, I overheard them talking in the living room. Jennifer had come over under the guise of a family visit, but they didn't realize I was in the hallway, just out of sight. "This needs to happen soon, Lily," Jennifer said, her voice low and urgent. "We can't wait much longer. If she gets her hands on the inheritance, everything will be ruined." "I know, Mom," Lily replied, sounding exasperated. "I have been working on it, but she's tougher than I expected. We might have to go with Plan B." Plan B? I felt a chill run down my spine. I had no idea what Plan B entailed, but I knew it couldn't be good. I'd heard enough. It was time to strike back, to expose them for the deceitful, conniving people they truly were. I had everything I needed: proof of their conspiracy, their invasion of my privacy, and their blatant disregard for Tom's well-being. Now all I had to do was put it all together. When Tom returned home that night, I told him we needed to talk. He seemed reluctant, but I insisted. I showed him the emails, the camera footage, and even the recordings I'd taken of their conversations. He was shocked, his face growing pale as he realized the extent of his daughter's betrayal. For the first time, he looked at me not with suspicion, but with guilt, as though he finally understood the pain I'd been enduring. But it wasn't over yet. I knew that confronting Lily and Jennifer directly would only make them more dangerous. I needed a plan, a way to not only protect myself but to make sure they faced the consequences of their actions. Armed with the evidence and Tom's newfound understanding, I knew I had to act quickly. Confronting Lily and Jennifer head-on would only lead to more lies and deceit, but exposing them in a way that left no room for doubt was key. David, my lawyer, advised me to hold off on filing any charges immediately, suggesting instead that we gather one final piece of evidence that would turn the tide in my favor: a confession. It was risky, but David believed that with the right amount of pressure, we could push Lily or Jennifer to admit to their conspiracy outright. He recommended that we arrange a meeting under the guise of a family discussion to resolve the inheritance issue and any other disputes. We decided to record the conversation, giving us one last opportunity to get them to reveal the full extent of their plans. The following evening, I sat down with Tom and told him about the plan. He looked uneasy, still processing the shock of what his daughter and ex-wife had done. Part of him wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, a product of stress or overreaction. But the evidence spoke for itself, and he knew that inaction would only allow them to continue their manipulation. "Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" Tom asked, his voice strained. "Do you want the truth?" I replied, my tone firm. "Or would you rather let them keep tearing our lives apart?" He looked down, a mix of shame and resolve crossing his face. "Let's do it." The next day, We invited Lily and Jennifer over under the pretense of a family discussion to resolve things amicably. I could tell they were suspicious, but their smug expressions suggested they still believed they had the upper hand. They entered the living room with an air of superiority, Jennifer glancing around as if inspecting her future property, and Lily avoiding my gaze altogether. We all need to sit down and talk. I began, forcing a polite smile. Things have gotten out of hand, and it's time we address the issues directly. Jennifer smirked, crossing her arms as she leaned back in her chair. I agree. It's about time you realized where you stand in this family. I took a deep breath, glancing at Tom, who looked uncomfortable, but resolute. We want to know the truth. I'm tired of the lies, the manipulation, and the constant accusations. Lily scoffed, rolling her eyes. The truth. You wouldn't know the truth if it slapped you in the face. That was my opening. I held up my phone, showing her the screenshots of the emails she'd exchanged with Jennifer. Her face paled, her bravado crumbling for a moment before she quickly recovered, sneering at me. So you went snooping, she spat. That's rich coming from someone who's only here to steal what's rightfully ours. You mean the inheritance? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Or are you referring to your plan to frame me as mentally unstable to take over the family business? Jennifer's eyes narrowed, but she stayed silent, her expression carefully blank. Lily, however, let out a bitter laugh, her anger finally boiling over. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. This was supposed to be simple. All you had to do was stay out of the way, and none of this would have happened. But no, you had to dig where you didn't belong. Tom looked between us, his face a mixture of confusion and betrayal. Lily, is this true? Were you really plotting against her? Against us? Lily sneered at him, crossing her arms defiantly. Yes, Dad, it's true. I was protecting our family from this gold digger. She's been using you, trying to worm her way into everything we built together. I did what I had to do to keep her out. The words hung heavy in the air, and Jennifer finally spoke up, her voice cold and calculated. You were never part of this family, not really. I don't care what Tom sees in you, but I wasn't about to let you waltz in and take what isn't yours. Lily and I did what was necessary. It was exactly what I needed. I subtly tapped my phone, stopping the recording and saving it. I could feel a sense of triumph welling up inside me, but I kept my face neutral, unwilling to show my hand just yet. They had confessed to everything, and the recording was undeniable proof of their intentions. I hope you're both ready for the consequences, I said quietly, meeting Jennifer's icy stare with unwavering resolve. Lily's expression turned to one of panic as she realized what had just happened. What? What do you mean, consequences? You don't have any proof. I held up my phone, playing a short clip of the conversation back to them. The color drained from both their faces as they heard their own voices detailing their scheme. You didn't really think I'd confront you without a plan, did you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Tom looked devastated, his hands shaking as he took in the full scope of their betrayal. He turned to Lily, his voice breaking. You're my daughter. How could you do this? Lily opened her mouth to respond, but Jennifer cut in, her tone sharp and dismissive. Don't act so surprised, Tom. She did what I taught her to protect her family, something you clearly failed to do. I watched as Tom crumbled, his shoulders slumping as he processed the hurt and betrayal. But I had no sympathy left to give. My focus was on ensuring they faced the consequences of their actions. I turned to Jennifer, my voice steady and resolute. I have recorded everything, and I'm prepared to take this to the authorities if necessary. Your actions could have destroyed my life, and I'm done letting you manipulate us. You and Lily are going to face the consequences, one way or another. Jennifer's face twisted in anger, but she remained silent, realizing the weight of the situation. Lily, however, looked defiant, glaring at me as though I were the source of all her troubles. You won't get away with this, she spat, her voice trembling. You think you're clever, but we'll find a way to take you down. I met her gaze, unflinching. Good luck with that. With the recording saved and their confessions laid bare, I felt a surge of relief. They had underestimated me, believing I would crumble under the weight of their deceit. But I had outsmarted them, and now, for the first time, I held the upper hand. As Jennifer and Lily left, defeated and seething with anger, I turned to Tom. He looked broken, lost, and I knew that our lives would never be the same. But I had regained my dignity, my strength, and I had exposed their malicious plot. I wasn't just surviving. I was finally taking control of my own destiny. With the recording safely stored, I decided it was time to take the next steps. I filed an official complaint against Jennifer and Lily, not only for their plot to slander me but also for the attempted theft of my rightful share of the family estate. I didn't want to drag Tom into the middle of a lawsuit, but I knew this was the only way to expose them fully and hold them accountable. Tom, though devastated, stood by my side. I could see the pain in his eyes, the turmoil of facing the reality that his own daughter had conspired against us. He took a leave of absence from work, needing time to process everything. He apologized repeatedly, as though he bore some of the blame, but I reassured him that this was not his fault. Jennifer had poisoned Lily's mind long before I came into the picture, planting seeds of hatred and resentment that had finally come to fruition. As the legal proceedings began, word quickly spread among our friends and extended family. I knew the rumors would start, but I hadn't expected the sheer volume of gossip. Jennifer and Lily's accusations about my mental stability resurfaced, and I heard whispers that I'd manipulated Tom, that I was trying to destroy a happy family for my own gain. It was exhausting, but I kept my head high, knowing I had the truth on my side. Then came the threats. At first, they were subtle, Lily sending me hostile texts, Jennifer making snide remarks whenever we crossed paths at family functions. But as our case moved forward, they became bolder. One night, I received an anonymous message that said, "Drop the charges or you'll regret it." I showed it to Tom, who insisted we involve the police, but I knew they would never find the source. Jennifer and Lily were careful, always covering their tracks, hiding behind layers of manipulation. But I wasn't going to back down. I had come this far, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The legal team handling my case advised me to get a restraining order against both Jennifer and Lily. They argued that, given the recorded threats and their history of psychological manipulation, it was within my rights to seek protection. I agreed, and within days, I had orders in place barring them from contacting me directly or coming near my home. The restraining order, however, seemed to push them over the edge. Lily became even more erratic, leaving furious voicemails accusing me of tearing her family apart. Jennifer, in turn, called Tom, demanding that he come to his senses and leave me. She claimed I was turning him against his own blood, that I was using him to destroy their legacy. Tom refused to entertain her, blocking her number and cutting off contact with her entirely. It was a heartbreaking moment for him, but he chose to stand by me, reaffirming his commitment to our marriage and our future. The legal process was slow and arduous, dragging on for months. I had to relive every painful detail during depositions and in court, recounting how they had systematically tried to dismantle my life. Jennifer's lawyer attempted to paint me as a greedy outsider, a homewrecker intent on stealing what wasn't mine. But I remained composed, providing clear evidence and factual accounts of their manipulations. Through it all, I kept the original recording as my trump card. I knew that if things got worse, I could release it to the public, exposing Jennifer and Lily for who they truly were. But I hoped it wouldn't come to that. The scandal had already damaged our family's reputation, and I wanted to avoid dragging more people into the mess if possible. One day, as I was leaving the courthouse, Lily confronted me in the parking lot. She looked haggard, her once polished appearance replaced by dark circles under her eyes and a look of desperation that was almost pitiful. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, her voice a mixture of anger and sorrow. "We're family. Why can't you just let it go?" I looked at her, feeling a strange sense of calm. "Family doesn't try to ruin each other's lives, Lily. You and your mother have been trying to destroy me from the start, and I'm done being your victim." She sneered, crossing her arms. "You think you're so noble? You think Tom is going to stay with you after everything you've put him through?" "Maybe not," I replied, holding her gaze steadily. "But at least I'll know I did the right thing. Can you say the same?" Lily didn't respond, but the flicker of guilt in her eyes told me I had struck a nerve. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot. I felt a surge of relief, a sense of finality that I hadn't felt since this ordeal began. For the first time, I realized that I no longer feared them. I had taken back control of my life, and I wasn't going to let them dictate my future any longer. As the weeks passed, The case finally came to a close. Jennifer and Lily were forced to pay damages for their actions, and the restraining orders remained in place. They were humiliated, their reputations in tatters, and I had reclaimed my dignity. Tom and I decided to move away, starting fresh in a new city where we could build our life together free from the toxic influences of his past. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We both knew that healing would take time, but we were committed to rebuilding our trust and our relationship. As we drove away from the town that had once been our home, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The nightmare was finally over, and I had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.